Brian. I might use the podium, so please forgive me as I go through this. But happy to have you all towards the end of the session. You all stayed around for this mundane talk of topics you all probably know very, very well. So as Brian mentioned, and I'm thankful for the prior conversation because if I could repeat everything that was said, I would. The idea of getting started with the data, don't worry about being too much. Sarang, I thank you for being detailed, but the idea is to get started at some point, exchanging the data. You can start looking at your processes, how you can improve, what you need to do. But until you start doing it, you can't just jump to AI and start using it today. I think it's going to improve your business. So what we'll cover, I won't read through all these. I'll breeze through them quickly, but we are going to talk a bit about, I like to call it it's the inventory, devil's triangle, if you will, almost. But how do we balance inventory in an effort to, reduce working capital and maximize revenue? So I'll touch on common challenges. I'll touch on the current state, negative consequences of what we see today at TraceLink and what we've heard from customers. Desired state, positive business outcomes, required capabilities to achieve these outcomes. And we'll look at how Mint with OPUS reports and dashboards enables the supply chain. And last but not least, how to start, continue, or redesign your journey. That last piece, I think about a lot of companies who have started a digital journey. And if you want to raise your hand, if you're in the pharma space and you've started a digital journey, if it's going well, I see one in the back, thank you, Paul. But if you started a digital journey and it's going well, if you started a digital journey, you took a pause because ROI might be decreasing, efforts may be increasing, and you're not seeing the accelerated project plan you were promised at the onset, or you're apprehensive about starting a digital journey to get into the game and try your hand and see how you can improve your business. So when we talk about business goals, as mentioned in the last session, if you look at a few of these, they resonate quite a bit. And these are obvious. I call them obvious from my seat. Some others may not see them as obvious, but you want to reduce stockouts, right? I want to be able to obviously supply my customers with what I promise to supply them with, but I also want to reduce excess inventory, right? Those first two are the big challenge of, do I have enough based on this product type to supply my downstream, but I also have the right level where I'm not holding additional inventory and potentially going to the next step of, having the idea of write-offs, obsolescent inventory, and running into those challenges. We also look at the reduced or failure to supply, which is a big conversation I've had over the past 2 days with a lot of customers. Some were engaged with, some were perusing the floor as we walked around. But the idea is that I'm shipping downstream as a manufacturer, and I can incur failure to supply fees based on contractual relationships I have because I run out of stock of product. Right? And I can run out of stock for a number of reasons, which we'll touch on in a moment. Operational costs we want to reduce. The bottom four, you think about launching new products, going into new markets, improving service levels, and building new channels, right? Those bottom four are lofty goals from a business perspective. Say, how can we go in a positive direction with the business? If you look at the four on top, these are ways looking from an operational standpoint, how healthy or unhealthy are we, how are we operating? So these are goals that a lot of companies focus on. Some focus on all, some focus on a subset of them. But when we look at the supply chain challenges that affect how I can navigate those business goals, these challenges were discussed in depth on the prior sessions. The demand for forecast and supply planning, which is an ongoing iterative process. Why? Because things change. I won't say the terrible T word that's been going around in the news recently, but you can apply that word to the situation of, I planned for something, it did not go how I expected. Am I going to get the stock I received? Did I have a customer react ahead of time and purchase a bunch of product from me, disrupting the forecast plan I had set up? Now I have to determine, can I fill this purchase order? It's revenue, but how does it affect my forecast plan going forward? Channel and enterprise inventory, what's going where, is it positioned properly to fulfill those needs? We think about customer supplier OTIF. We hear OTIF a lot in this industry. I did not come from pharma. On time and full was a thing, but there were other metrics that took high precedence over on time and full. But if you aren't failing on your OTIF, you could potentially lose a customer, lose market share, customer satisfaction goes down, lost revenue, and things like that. Order and production visibility. This is the main point of my next slide I'm going to get into, but I placed an order. When am I going to get it? I'm going to get it. I'm going to get it when you promised I'm going to get it. When it arrives, is it what I actually asked for in my purchase order? Think about ordering on Amazon. I know some of you are probably on your phones now ordering some jewelry, some appliances, catching the next sale. Amazon does a fantastic job from a retail world. As the gentleman spoke on stage, other industries, they have to because they're meeting the end customer who has a lot of demands. They drive the supply chain. But imagine if you ordered something, you plan to be at home when the order's supposed to arrive. Your phone app told you it's going to arrive and it's not there. Or order production visibility. Did you even receive it? Are you producing it? Has it started shipping? These questions are huge challenges from the manufacturer-CMO relationship, and I'll show you on the next slide. It impacts just more than those two entities. Onboarding customers and suppliers, right? We think about signing a new contract with a customer, getting new business. What if that particular business entity requires you to be digital in a space or has certain required capabilities that you may not possess today that you want to aspire to? What does that look like as far as onboarding those customer suppliers, being agile enough to switch new suppliers in an easy way, as opposed to having to start in a manual way and, as spoken on the last stage, continue the same process we may have been doing because it's comfortable. I'll slightly bypass compliance and regulatory requirements, but we look at supplier lead times and customer cycle times. Those things matter. I can't just place an order today and expect to get it tomorrow because I want it really bad. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way in retail. It doesn't work that way in business to business operations unless you're willing to pay a certain fee, which we talk about reducing, working capital, increasing revenue. If I'm paying additional fees because of a mistake or an urgent need, we run into the idea of, it's not healthy for the supply chain. So when we think about supplier lead times, how long does it take them to actually produce, take it back from produce, procure what I need, then produce what I need by a date that suffices so I can fulfill my demand downstream. Customer cycle times as well. What's their order to cash or procure to pay process look like? What are they doing downstream? Do you understand your supply chain end to end? We've said end to end a lot these past 3 days. Do you really understand your impact of your failure to execute on your downstream customers and how they operate? And I think the ultimate piece is, the commerce marketplace is a patient delivery, right? Patient delivery, I think, is the paramount of this industry to get product to patient on time, as requested. And I think, when we look at these challenges above, all of those can be impediments to achieving positive patient delivery. And again, what we're showing on screen here, this has not come from TraceLink and our brains putting together and putting a bunch of stuff on the slide. This is from customer conversations and understanding of what's going on in the industry today. So when we think about the Inventory Balancing Act, I put this slide together not too long ago, actually, but I was thinking, I had a conversation yesterday, we got into a very good discussion about, it's simple. I place an order as a manufacturer. Well, let's take a step back. I'm a manufacturer. I have a wholesaler I may work with, and I may go direct to market and sales, right? On the other side of that, I work with a CMO and have a direct supplier I work with as well. Of these three, we have to orchestrate the perfect storm to ensure as demand comes from downstream, I can assess what I have available ready today, and I hope that my forecast I sent to my CMO a while back still stands and they can keep the cycle going so I have the optimal inventory level to supply downstream. So when we start thinking about that is, the manufacturer has a 3PL. It's the location the product has to get shipped to. That team is responsible for shipping that product to those destinations in a timely manner. So we're looking at all of the functions of a supply chain from a procure to pay, order to cash interaction between the manufacturer, wholesale, and direct to market on the demand side. The exact same thing happens on the other side with the manufacturer, with the CMO direct suppliers on the supply side. What are we doing? How are we communicating? And I can tell you today, as we've heard throughout this conference, a lot of it's done manually. A lot of you, and I've said this quite a few times, have paid hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars for an enterprise resource system, a WMS, a TMS. You've spent and invested in a proper way to enhance your business internally. But what does that mean outside of your four walls to enhance the whole supply chain? So internally, you're functioning very well. You have well-oiled machines in-house managing those systems, enhancing those systems that business partners request. But then we think about speeding up the supply chain, balancing inventory. Do I know that demand signal downstream? Do I know in this moment of time what my 3PL is holding in inventory? And do I know that my direct supplier has sent materials to the CMO? And is that CMO producing on schedule to get the inventory where it needs to be so I can deliver it downstream? I think this, everyone would agree, is a complex interaction that has to occur seamlessly. And we were talking in the solution fair, everyone in here, how many in here get to inbox zero? Just raise a hand, don't not have to say anything. Inbox zero, your email box is at zero right now. Okay, Alex, thank you. But I think you think about in the supply chain world, if you've ever been in the supply chain organization and actually worked in those functions, inbox zero is almost not achievable unless you have a small operation. So the idea, I want to send a purchase order over to my partner. I've downloaded it out of SAP. I've sent an email over. I can't guarantee they're going to see that PO today. When they see that, if they saw that PO in the moment I saw it, They may have inventory available to fulfill my whole PO. If they don't get to that inbox for 2 days later, 3 days later, they open it up, that inventory snapshot I thought was there may be gone. Oh, and by the way, that was based on an inventory report I got over email 4 days ago from that same person. So I'm working on outdated data. We joked about this in the solution fair, but that's how it happens quite often. So when we think about the manual interaction that the supply chain takes, we're already putting ourselves 10 steps behind and even being proactive to mitigate risk. So I'm going to go over, again, I'll flash these up because I'm not going to read through all the complete slide here, but when we think about the current state negative consequences, it's that limited visibility. If I can't see my supply chain, you may be operating end-to-end, but you have no end-to-end visibility. You're shipping product up and down the supply chain across the globe in various states to move it around. The only thing I think that moves on time is the money, because people want to get paid on time. That's what I would argue, right? But we want to get product in the right place at the right time. Limited visibility, inbound and outbound. You are unsure how to operate. We look at the manual processes we discussed. Again, every entity on that screen is impacted because someone else's failure to execute in a timely manner. So how do we get around that? It's the customer's current state today. It's working. They're making money. Everyone's doing well, I would argue. However, when we look at the bottom line, how do we improve? There's only so many ways that you can slice the bread to really improve your operations. We look at the demand and supply data not being synchronized, right? They spoke about the connections modeling thing. That's an iterative process. That changes often. The bullwhip effect is a common thing in supply chain. It's been around forever. The moment a downstream customer sends a massive purchase order upstream because they're reacting to something in their supply chain, if I don't have the right data, I'm going to make a very poor business decision. Oh, we'll take that purchase. Yeah, we can do that. Yeah, sure, yeah. We allocate that inventory to that customer. 2 days later, I get a normal PO for my normal customer that I can't fulfill because I reacted improperly, not knowing what was happening upstream with my CMO, because you never had a proper inventory snapshot to begin with. So again, you're always working in a reactive state, which goes to the fourth bullet. Delays, quality problems discovered too late to mitigate, and they cause reactive, puts everyone in a reactive state. If we're all reacting in the supply chain is always going to slow down. It's always going to be stagnant. And there's always going to be challenges. Until you put yourself at least in a proactive, as best as possible state, you cannot mitigate those risks properly, and everyone again is affected. But the negative consequences, I think, beyond the obvious, and I think those are more, I would say, personnel related on the left side. We think about the negative consequences, the high working capital component of that. Most companies protect against stockouts and inventory fluctuations by doing what? Somebody say it for me. What's that? Yes, they buy inventory. They buy more inventory. Give me as much as I can hold, so long as hopefully it doesn't expire or become obsolescent as inventory. But give me more so I can protect against an out of stock. Why? Because we perceive that an out of stock is less impactful than losing a customer. I don't want to lose a customer. I'd rather hold a bunch of inventory, have high inventory costs, and not lose my customer downstream. Two different people looking at that number. The CFO is looking at both of them, but two different entities are looking at that number. Commercial versus operations. How do we balance that, do that balancing act to figure out who's right, who's wrong, how do we optimize it? Increase operational costs. Late shipments. Most warehouses, especially, they have people who are staged and prepared and qualified to move certain product off of the delivery vehicle into a certain location and status inside the warehouse. They may call in certain teams on certain days to plan for loads of deliveries. I've called in staff to deliveries late because you didn't tell me. Operational costs. The other side of that is late delivery and the idea of I now need to expedite my orders. A lot of stuff goes air freight. Air freight is not cheap. To get a space, if you've had an ocean container set up to go and it's significantly cheaper, it takes longer. But if I have to expedite product, often someone's looking at the air cost to go DHL, FedEx, UPS to send something in the air because someone did not plan properly for inventory movements. And the last but not least, penalty and compliance risk. I think the penalties, again, look at the bottom, the downstream on the commercial side of failure to supply fees, late deliveries, and then we're breaching contract. We have SLAs we agreed to operate this business a certain way. Someone has to get yelled at every single day about why is another late shipment happening, or we're getting, a request for payment or a reduction on our monthly invoice because we failed to meet SLAs due to something that happened far upstream that could have been planned for months ago. But again, if you don't have proper visibility, none of this even matters because you're just going to react, and that's what you think the business is supposed to run like, but it's not. So when we think about the desired state, what that looks like for customers, it's not going to be obvious or shocking to anybody as I go through these, but the real-time end-to-end visibility. End-to-end does depend on how and where you operate as a node in the supply chain, but the other part of that is you can care about your downstream customers, how they are affected, again, by your lack of planning. So real-time end-to-end visibility means data sharing as much as possible with the partners I affect. If I ship to a wholesaler and direct to market, I want to get close to those hospital systems. I want to get close to those organizations to understand how can I help you improve to be better? Because if I am better for you, you sell more, I sell more to you. We have a pretty healthy relationship there. Same thing upstream. Direct to suppliers, working with the 3PL, working with the CMOs and the CPOs. How can we operate better and share data to get real end-to-end visibility so I know what you are planning to do before you do it so I can plan to do something ahead of time as well. Synchronized demand and supply. Again, it's a simple idea, as I mentioned. Downstream demand is coming up. Do I know that I can support that demand 4 weeks out from today, 6 months out from today even, depending on the lead time of the product? Do I have a snapshot of that? Am I working on real-time data? Or am I working on last month's month-end close information? I'm thinking I'm in a great position. Or am I sending emails every day asking my CMO counterpart, hey, do you have an inventory snapshot? Hey, where are my positions here? Have you started production just yet? These conversations become the norm. They are the norm, but they don't have to be. So some companies are taking that step to get real-time data. They use portals to an extent, somewhat real-time, right? Some of them have daily supply chain planning calls. We sit on a call for an hour on Zoom, we argue and figure it out. We adjust the numbers and we update purchase orders, acknowledgements, ASNs, and plans. Does that work? No, not all the time. So we think about what does that synchronized demand and data supply data look like when we talk about Kinaxis, our partners Simple, those planning solutions, being able to continuously optimize the supply and demand based on real-time data coming through a digitalized platform. And then doing both of those properly, we look at optimized inventory levels. Now I can truly talk about balancing certain inventory at certain locations, whether it be domestically or globally, to fulfill the need of demand in my ecosystem. Some spaces may support just-in-time manufacturing distribution, right? I can now re-optimize my network because I have proper inventory at warehouses. I don't have to worry about doing an air shipment from East Coast to West Coast because I have proper inventory on the West Coast and East Coast and in the South and in the Midwest to support these models. Positive business outcomes are obvious. I'm reducing my working capital. I'm not holding a ton of inventory to protect against the idea of an out of stock because I know it hurts my customer service levels, right? So we free up a bit of cash. There's no additional storage, right? Some warehouses charge you for floor stock. If it doesn't fit in an inventory rack and you sit on the floor, that's extra money they're gonna charge you for holding that inventory. It's simple in a space that's not being used, but it's their space, so they charge you for it. And minimizing write-offs. So you hold additional inventory. Ideally, you could have product that it expires or becomes obsolete. Now you have to write that off. We reduce all that that's what we want to reduce by getting this positive business outcome. Faster cycle times, order to cash and procure to pay. Everybody wants their product on time as fast as possible, and they want to get paid and pay as fast as possible. Because if you've worked with finance people before, they are very angry at the end of the month. They would like to go home on those 5 days and not stay up all day figuring out where the money actually is. Did we pay properly? Are all the invoices correct and proper? But the idea is that we've completed the process and cycle so they can start their analysis and get it done faster and do their reconciliation. Improve service levels. I think this goes without saying. Again, if you're going downstream, getting it close to the patient, it's your job to have high customer service levels. I think it goes without saying. But lower operational costs is huge because now I like to think of this more so not just physical workers, but more so I'm not doing any manual work. I'm a pretty smart person. Pretty smart teams. I can now use my time and brain power to look at how I innovate the business. I'm not spending time downloading PDFs, zipping files, emailing it over, checking my inbox to download a file and upload it to a platform, spending time on calls, figuring out, is this going the right way? Did we check this box? Are we following the project plan? When we digitally automate this, the idea is that this positive business outcome lowers operational costs for human resources and operations, but also gives time back to those individual contributors. So required capabilities. This is the thoughts, again, of customers who've gone down this path with us and said, what does it look like? I think I need this. And most of them are spot on. They need a collaborative digital workflow, right? Why is my procure to pay process manual? Let's ask that question. Why is my inventory reconciliation process manual? Just short of physical cycle counts in the warehouse, we shouldn't have to do much beyond that if we're working in a digital world. Real-time production visibility, as we mentioned. We have a customer use case we're working on now where they just want to know the steps of the production process. Are they being done in a timely manner so they can judge their CMO properly and ensure that they have proper supplier performance? That's not much to ask if I'm purchasing product from you, right? It sounds very simple, but there's a struggle and a challenge. But the idea is if I have real-time production visibility, let's be honest. If something goes wrong, it's not okay, but it's okay. Because if you tell me ahead of time, I have a chance to mitigate the risk, figure out a new plan, inform my downstream customers of the next stage of my supply chain internally. Hey, this product's not going to arrive today. What else can we do? What's our plan? Because we're not going to get this on time. It's a fact. It's happening. So we're as proactive as we can possibly be. Automated exception alerts. There's a use case we talked about where a purchase order is late. That's fine. Do I need to tell everybody in this room a purchase order is late? If the purchase order is assessed and looked at from an inventory level of, by it being 2 weeks late, do I have enough inventory in stock available to fulfill the demand I'm expecting for the next 2 weeks? If not, it's a problem. We need to address it, but it's not an exception I need to address today. So I'm not wasting my team's time chasing something that's really not a problem. The last one is, I think I told a group this before we came in here, this is the most important to me, is scalable integration with CMO systems. And I would say CMO, 3PL, downstream customers, CPOs, all your supply chain partners to ingest not only production data, but all data related to your supply chain interactions. Why? Because again, I commend you for starting a digital project, but if you're trying to do 300 plus connections point to point, it's going to take you a very long time, and it's going to be very frustrating, and you're going to fall into that number 2 tier I talked about earlier, where you started a project and it stopped. So you've onboarded 5 or 10 suppliers and you've got 60 or 70 left. It looks good when you start to do it, but now you have 2 separate processes you're managing, one digital, one not, and that's extra work, actually extra work for your team, as opposed to just one manual process, I'd argue. So from that, I'll go into some mint stuff. I have a few minutes left, so you guys may have seen this slide from earlier presentations, but this is where we want to help companies get to. We have ERP in the middle, take ERP out, put the system of record in the middle, which is perfectly fine. You may or may not interact with all these partners on the screen in some kind of capacity, or may aspire to go direct to market one day versus just through a wholesaler. You may want to add a few CPOs or CMOs. You may want to have multiple 3PLs depending on how you operate locally or globally. The idea is that TraceLink's solution allows you to connect, more so the proper word, link, to all of these partners quickly, dynamically, and taking a lot of strain off the IT business partners who typically take these projects on themselves. And I think, again, everyone aspires to go this direction, but the how you get there can be challenging if you don't have the right technology partners in-house. Genpack mentioned them being the operational strategical arm to support that conversation. What's the plan look like? What does the organizational change look like? What SOPs need to move around? What do we actually have to do to make this a viable project that's just not piecemeal, that's going to fall apart once it starts because we didn't plan properly? But if you think about technology first, and I think I'm looking at Roscoe, he might agree with me, technology can solve the problem, but do you understand the problem before you start trying to throw technology at it even? We support those conversations, understanding the use cases, understanding what's going on. How does the supply chain operate? Who are the players? What are your strategic goals you want to achieve? When we answer all those questions, then I might throw the word mint out in the conversation. But before, I really want to know what's going on before I say, yeah, we can solve it, sure. Do I believe we can solve it? Sure. But I don't want to tell you that first. I want to know really what's going on so we can actually have a dialogue and help companies and you all think about the challenges you have today. So digitizing to do the procure to pay, order to cash, inventory management, financial reconciliation processes, everything is supported from a digital connection standpoint. When we look at now supporting from OPUS reports and dashboards, I think, again, another conversation, I love FutureLink, is why it happens this way. We have these conversations of, I have a data lake, I have a BI tool, I have SAP. However, it's very hard to share multiple visual representations to all of my partners. OPUS reports and dashboards supports that. I usually say on the prior slide, we're not looking to replace an ERP, TMS, WMS today. That's not our goal. I think, Shabir and Paul and team and Lucy may get together one day and say, yeah, we're going to be the new ERP on the block. We might do that. Today, we're not looking to replace the execution system's role in the supply chain, yet enable companies to band together, link, and share data. So when we look at reports and dashboards, those partner entities who are working inside the platform on your behalf, you can share reports and dashboards that speak to the relationship you have one-to-one with that CMO, 3PL, direct supply partner, wholesaler partnership you have. So as you curate those, you can share those out. What this does is, they talked about metrics and KPIs. Once we assess those metrics and KPIs, we build those visuals. So now you can monitor and have a direct conversation about the data you're transacting with those partners. So there's no variance of, well, you sent me a spreadsheet last week and this is the model I created from it. Well, that's great, but that's not the data we're using today. This is now out of date. So you're working off old data. This is real-time live data as transactions flow in and out of the platform that allows you to tell a story, have a conversation, make a plan, and improve the supply chain. So I think the second biggest question beyond, how does TraceLink do it? I think it's more so how you get started. So this is a slide I like to throw up. It's been around, I think Oriel and Lisa's team created this. Is a very good slide, but it's how do we get started with the digitalization roadmap? As I mentioned, we want to really understand and define your objectives. How is your business operating? It's a fun exercise. It may feel like a challenging therapy session at the beginning, but I promise you, by the end of it, we'll all come out of this understanding that there are challenges that every company has, but we're looking to identify those, rank and file those, and understand how we can actually improve supporting those goals and objectives. After the prioritize, we look at a roadmap. Let's plan now what this actually looks like over an implementation project planning period to get you going and start on the right path. That involves working with those partners you identify, understanding their needs and desires potentially to match up with yours, to again give them a benefit of working with you on a digital platform. It may be a first for them. They may have been aching to do it a long time and you're just behind the curve a little bit. Nonetheless, we want to work with them the same way as well. Then we execute the plan and do the implementation. But it doesn't stop there. I think the key piece is that last one is monitoring progress. Is it improving? Now you have data flowing, as mentioned before, data is flowing. Now do we understand the operational implications, the SOPs, the project planning in place, our goals to grow and expand and redesign and go to a single ship model, all those things that we've heard talk about. Is it based on actual data? Now we have real data, now we have different conversations. Now we can think innovation and moving the needle where we position ourselves in the market. So I know I said a lot from this podium. I'm going to stop and I'm going to look around the room and see if anyone has any questions, thoughts, or even better, comments. I think I'll conclude. Thanks.